Oh, hello. Thank you, Julia. Good evening, and sorry about that. Apparently, we had the microphone muted. So, welcome.
To be fair,
to
that's safest for everybody.
that is
sometimes.
actually often safest for everybody. But good evening, and sorry about the slight false start. And hi to Daria, and apologies for that. I'm Alex. This is Jamie. We're the Online Wine Tasting Club. Very warm welcome to our new members, and a warm welcome back to those who've been with us for a while. So, hello, and thank you very much for joining.
Absolutely. So we are 2023 now, and we are talking a little bit about the trends that we might think we're going to get in 2023. Yes,
we can. Well, that's a good sign. That's a good sign.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and some of these are little trends, like, hey, here's a cool new thing that perhaps you haven't tried before. And some of these are bigger trends that are kind of a bit more serious, like what's going on with the world, what's actually happening, and how's it affecting.
And then we'll come back in December and see if we actually have a clue or not. So we've got 6 wines to taste tonight. We've got an interview. Alex has got slightly obsessed with regenerative agriculture today. He's been doing some reading and has decided to do a little bit of a research, and he's got a PowerPoint presentation and all those kind of things.
I now know the word rhizosphere, which I did not know before, and that's very exciting. So it's another fascinating term.
Before Alex starts getting on his high horse, we should probably get wine one into the glass.
So wine number one, we are going to Japan, and the trend here is that we're seeing a lot of interest in Japanese wines, and there was a real buzz at one of the tastings we went to a couple of weeks ago around the whole sort of Japan area, and it's an area we obviously most people associate with things like sake, the rice wine, but they do grow grapes. In fact, they grow some extraordinary grapes that cost hundreds of dollars for just for a bunch of grapes. Beautiful, weird shapes, awesome, just levels of perfection that you would not expect for anything. But there are some native grapes that they like to make wine from as well there, and they are from the same family, the Vitis vinifera family, that we tend to make wines from in the rest of the world. So yeah,
absolutely.
You spoke to them, didn't you?
Oh, of course. And they've made there's Cabernet Sauvignon, there's Syrah, there's Sauvignon Blanc. There's a lot of the international varietals that people know and aware of, and all that kind of cool stuff. But there's this one grape which is absolutely theirs called Koshu. Yeah. And for anyone who's new to us, Alex has just put the tasting notes live, and if you can pop the big screen up so people can see how to do it. Those who have joined us before, we know how to do it. You can scan the QR code, go to .com and put the number in, or you can go to TOWTC/taste, and then you can just pop your tasting notes in, and it will pop up in this word cloud. So, it's not so-and-so says this and so-and-so thinks that. It just creates a word cloud of what the tasting notes. Because I could sit here and go, this tastes like lemon, this tastes like peaches, it tastes like this. But the joy of this is we all just get to taste what we want to taste, and we've already got tangy in there. But before I go on too deep and meaningful about this, we actually I had an interview with the winemaker, so maybe we should just go straight there while people put their tasting notes in and enjoy.
Have a drink,
wine number one.
Enjoy it, pop your tasting notes in, and listen to what the actual winemaker has to say. See you in a bit.
Our signature grape variety is Koshu. So Koshu is very important grape variety to us because in terms of its history, and also it's kind of like family love, so it's very, very important. Where we located, we are Yamanashi. We are located in Yamanashi. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Japanese map, but there are 2 GI, geographical indications, in Japan. One is Yamanashi, and the other one is Hokkaido, so only 2 GI. Yeah, Koshu has been grown here about more than 1,000 years, so quite a long time ago. Of course, Koshu originally came from the Caucasus region because it's Vitis vinifera. So, and Koshu came to Japan through China more than 1,000 years ago, and has been cultivated over 1,000 years. So it has a very long history. And my ancestor, my family, my grandfather, my father has been always so much into Koshu, it dedicated themselves to make quality Koshu wines. So I think, of course, Cabernet Sauvignon, Chardonnay, Merlot are very attractive varieties, but Koshu is, it's more Japan's identity, and it's like our grape variety. So we export to 30% about 30% of our production goes to foreign countries, so to the export, and 70% in domestic markets. But Japanese market is now changing because sake consumption is decreasing and wine consumption is increasing. And 10 years ago, when I went to the very famous Japanese restaurant, traditional Japanese restaurant, always they served red wine like Bordeaux, Grand Cru, Classé, but it doesn't match Japanese food because Japanese food is more, elegant and more lighter style. So normally it doesn't match the Bordeaux big style red wine doesn't match well. But I wanted to say Japanese wine, wine used to be like the brand. So people drink the wine as a brand. So, but now it's changing. Younger people and also female consumers tends to drink more rosé, white wine, and lighter style. And Japanese wine market is more competitive now. So we used to drink more French and Italian wines, but now we consume Chile wines, Argentinian wines, Australian wines. So it's more diverse. I studied in France for 3 years, and then I had an opportunity to be an exchange student to Stellenbosch University in South Africa. So I studied both very top old wine country and new world wine country. And then I decided to go to do the vintages in Southern Hemisphere. When I came back to Japan, I wanted to do New Zealand, Australia, Chile, Argentina, and South Africa. So I made a wine in my father's winery, and then after my vintage in Japan, I went to Southern Hemisphere. And my first year, I went to New Zealand, Waipara, and then my second vintage in Southern Hemisphere was Australia. I went to Hunter Valley and the Western Australia, Margaret River. Then I went back to Japan again, and I went to Chile for 3 months. And then I went back to Japan, and I went to Argentina for 3 months. And then I went to South Africa, and then Japan and Tasmania, Australia, and that was my last vintage in Southern Hemisphere. Climatically, I think more old world side because we have huge vintage variations. So it's Japan is a small island, so we have like when I did a vintage in Chile, I was shocked because I asked my boss when was the best vintage in Chile, and he answered me like pairs like 2004, 2006, and 2008, and I was shocked because I was surprised because Chile they have like good vintage, great vintage for 1 year per 2 year. How do you say once out?
Yeah, every other year.
Yeah, every other year. So in Japan, it's impossible. Like probably the best vintage I had was 2009, but before that, probably 2002, and before that, probably 1997. So quite huge vintage variations. So I think more climatically, more old world style, old world side, but mentally we should be like a new world. So we must be challenger. We must innovate and challenging, and I quite like the mentality of South America and Chile, Argentina. I think Koshu is our star because we actually have the other indigenous grape varieties, but they are hybrid grape variety.
Okay.
So it's totally different from Koshu.
Thank you very much for your time, and we'll speak very soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy. Thank you. Bye.
Hello and welcome back. And by the way, this is a bottle of the stuff, and it's quite hard to see with the light, but you can see there's some beautiful Japanese writing on it. It's a very elegant wine and an elegant bottle, isn't it?
Absolutely, I think it's fresh, it's good drinking, and there's a couple of points in the chat that people didn't realise that Japan made wines, and we're seeing more and more places that we didn't expect making wine, and for a lot of places, it's not always that it's new winemaking. It's just it's becoming a little bit more global, and we're seeing it in other places, and there's all kinds of places popping up there.
Madagascar and Bhutan in the chat, but apparently don't worry about the Madagascan wine. That's a top tip there from Julia. I like that.
Madagascan vanilla rum.
Madagascan vanilla rum.
Story.
Yeah. But wine is a difficult thing to try to recreate. There's lots of people that can do things like a gin or a rum or something like that. Well, I think one of the biggest trends in drinks recently, in the last sort of 10 years or so, has been Japanese whiskey and the rise of Japanese whiskey, to the point where bottles of wine are now going for bottles of whiskey are going for tens of thousands of pounds. It's unbelievable stuff. And I think what that taught me was to never underestimate the Japanese, because when they put their mind to something and they fastidiously improve and improve and improve it, this sort of continuous improvement process, they want to understand how things get about. And it's that spirit of improvement that is leading to produce some fantastic stuff.
Absolutely, and I think we can pop the tasting notes
up
and
let's
see what
do
everybody said. But for me, it's very, very elegant. It's zippy. There's green apple. Delicate. There's all those words in there, and I like the fact that it sits at 11.5% as well. So it's fairly light. It's not going to blow your head off. It's very drinkable. And when you think about what goes together, grows together, you talk about your general Japanese food. A lot of raw fish, that sushi-esque kind of thing. It's absolutely ideal for this.
Yeah.
And I think Alex, during that video, kind of dived in and he played on the internet a bit because he was talking about grapes, and he's got a little picture of this bunch of grapes he was talking about. And
I slightly underestimated how much it actually went for. So this very bunch of grapes, so this perfectly round shapes, and they are huge, that sold at auction for
$12,000.
$12,000 for one bunch of grapes. Now, if we were to make wine out of that, I think the wine drinking would be a bit of an expensive thing. But these are generally given as gifts to show off to your boss. They have kind of melons that are formed into cuboid shapes. There's all sorts that's going on. It's astonishing. But to give you a little bit of context of whereabouts in Japan this is made, most people obviously know Tokyo is just northeast of Mount Fuji. And if you go down there to Mount Fuji, or Fujisan as they would call it, just north of there, you go through a little sort of valley, and then you're sort of heading up into the foothills of the Japanese Alps, which are astonishing, absolutely astonishing, like so beautiful. We did this road trip around the whole of the country, and we must have gone a couple of miles away from the Grace Winery, and I just didn't know about it. We were heading up to one of the whiskey distilleries, of course, where which absolutely standard. You wouldn't expect it. Me completely gloss over the key wine producing region of Japan and go straight through it without noticing. But it you really do get some astonishingly cool weather in the Alps, and you can get some baking heat right down, especially in the sunshine, and obviously with a bit of humidity. But as you go up into those Alps, it's fresh. There's snow. They cut roads that are like sort of the height of a 4-story high building with solid snow on either side of them. And you're driving through this road that has just been carved through the snow. It's absolutely incredible. Really brilliant place.
Sounds a bit risky.
Yeah, it does sound a bit risky, and yet it's just been perfectly engineered, and this one is so carefully made in that kind of style. It's just so clean, so fresh, and it's not got those kind of but kind of things you get with some wines from Sun Country. We did the Indian wine, of course.
Yeah,
this week,
I think sometimes there's new wines, and I think we had it with English wine for a long time that we said, oh, that's pretty good for an English wine. And I had that when I lived in the States. The wines coming out of Virginia at the beginning, there was a lot that they're quite good for a wine from Virginia. This doesn't need that caveat. You just go, this is just lovely wine. And I think that's really important as the world becomes a bit more global. You can't stick that caveat and go, oh, this is good for, and give it that.
And of all the countries that have resisted the kind of instinct to globalize, Japan's right up the top of them. They've had this opportunity. They've been traveling internationally for decades. They've been a very developed society, and yet they wanted to preserve what was Japanese. And so by going for these grapes that were native to Japan, I think it's really, really cool. I think it's really cool that it's something distinct and unique.
I do think this year we're going to see a big push on Japanese wine in the UK. So keep an eye out for it. I think we're going to start seeing it potentially. Yes, it's already in some of your independent wine shops and things like that. But
they do. The friend watching a show with me tonight wanted to make sure that we knew that Japan has a day in the spring when they celebrate the blossom, the cherry blossom in specific, and that was the time of year when I was there, and it's quite funny because it rolls across the country from south to north. It starts off in the warmer parts of the south. Sorry, what's going on?
So I'm just laughing, but I'm getting tips from home from young William.
No, that's William, is it? Okay, great.
I think so.
That's Jamie's son. The cherry trees are much like grapevines are grown and cloned. So, we take cuttings of the grapevine and we clone it, and that means they ripen at the same time. So they did that with cherry trees, right? And they planted all of them as clones of the same thing. So what you're seeing is an expression of the climate. As it's in the warmer parts, they ripen at that time. And as it's in the cooler parts, they ripen at that time. And so this wave of pink just goes across it. And I've forgotten the name for it, which somebody's going to tell me in the chat. I'm absolutely sure of it. Oh God! But yeah, they have parties and they go out and they have picnics underneath these cherry blossom trees. It is so stunning. It's really an amazing place.
Welcome to the online cherry blossom watching
club. The cherry blossom watching club,
much.
for sure. But yeah. What the heck's it called? All right, okay. Let's move on swiftly.
He'll come back to that. Anyway, so
I spent a month there, and it was
you
from the start of it
well
to the yeah, I know.
I can find this one. So from Japan to somewhere a little bit more people might recognise. Are you really googling it right now?
I'm googling it.
Well, I will.
while you do that, on with
the show. Okay, so wine number 2. We are heading to
Sakura.
Okay, are we okay?
We can move on. We can go on.
Okay, so we are heading to France, and we're heading to Burgundy. And anyone who's ever done a WSET level 1 or is just getting into wine will absolutely know that if it's white wine and it's from Burgundy, it is always going to be Chardonnay. And if it's red wine and it's from Burgundy, it's always going to be Pinot Noir. Unless it's not. That's where we're going.
Indeed. Unless it's not.
So what
Burgundy's changing, but it's also going back to what it did before. So this has always been part of it. This isn't a new one. This is a traditional variety.
It is very traditional. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce this a little bit.
Okay.
You can start putting your tasting notes in. Alex, while you're drinking along, is going to start his War and Peace speech on regenerative thing. And then when you're bored of him, tell him to be quiet in the chat, and then we will come back and round up the tasting notes. Okay. So what we've got in the glass here, and the reason for this is Burgundy, and this isn't, to start with, this isn't a cheap wine. No. It's definitely not. But usually it's Chardonnay, but you're also allowed to grow, in certain places, Aligote. Mm-hmm. And there's certain places that you can grow some Sauvignon Blanc. And we're also starting to see people planting some Syrah. You can't do that and call it a Burgundy yet, but it's getting there. We're seeing these things.
Get there.
But
They'll get there.
Aligote it's been in Burgundy for as long as Burgundy's been growing wine. And it was
there's some Sauvignon Blanc there as well, I think, now, isn't there?
In Saint-Brie.
Yeah.
In Saint-Brie, absolutely. But Aligote was the original wine for the cocktail, the Kir. Introduced by Felix Kir, who was the mayor of Dijon in the mid-1900s. And there's lots of stories as to why the Kir Royale was invented. There's stories...
Which is cassis and champagne. Don't accept Prosecco.
That's a Kir Royale.
Sorry, the Royale. You just said about the Royale.
Did I? I'm talking about Kir.
Oh, okay.
I'm not talking about Royales. I'm talking about this. So it was either the fact that this guy Felix Kir, who was named after, just liked to give it to delegates, and it got passed around the world, and that's how it came. And there was another little chat that it was done because during World War II, a lot of the the top quality
Yeah.
red Burgundies were seized by the Germans and taken
Ah.
away. So they coloured the Aligote with some black currants to go from there. So, but this is made down in Chassagne-Montrachet, which is the south of the Côte de Beaune.
Yep.
So it's the south of the top bit of Burgundy. And Chassagne-Montrachet is world renowned for its Chardonnay. It makes some really great, very, very, very premium, very, very expensive Chardonnays.
It does.
But this family's got about 8 acres. They grow Chardonnay, they grow Pinot Noir, they grow Aligote. And this is the Aligote. And this is, yes, it is 100% Aligote for the question that just popped in. And what this is for me is, if you want to drink Burgundy, and Burgundy prices are going through the roof
because it's an investment
right now.
You know? Yeah.
Through the roof, because there's only a certain amount that can be grown each year. People are wanting to buy it. They've had some bad harvests recently because
lots of frost,
lots
of
of frost,
hail.
lots of lost grapes. So they're making less, and therefore it's going up in price. So something like this gives you that opportunity to drink Burgundy without the skyrocketing prices. And I just think it's absolutely delicious. It's got bright fruit.
Wonderful.
It's got lovely richness.
Really wonderful.
But while people taste this, you should dive into
I should, but
Regenerative.
I just before I kick into that, I just want to very quickly say that I've heard a lot of Burgundy winemakers talking about this grape and almost rediscovering it, and they were growing it in a certain way. There was an awful lot of it was grown in just sort of kind of low maintenance, low effort, bush vines.
Made a bit of table wine on the side.
Yeah,
and they sold their Chardonnay and they drank their Aligote.
Yeah. And now I think with Chardonnay is starting to come under a lot of pressure. It's a very fragile grape. It's a grape that has very poor disease resistance. It gets attacked by everything, and it's in this vulnerable state for quite a long period of time before it's from when it started to bud and come to life in the new year through to when you can actually get the grapes off it. It's vulnerable, and that's what's hit Burgundy in the last few years. And so people are now starting to give the Aligote a bit more attention. They're finding these old vines and they are treating them with a bit of respect, and they're retraining them to go onto a more kind of modern training and pruning system. And I think the results are fantastic. And they're giving it more respect in the winery as well. And this, you can tell a lot of the winemaking attention that's gone into this. Lots of kind of work has happened with this, and I think it makes a complex wine, a really nice complex wine that could work, with some of those really super rich. And the Burgundy food, your coq au vin, your snails, these really classic sort of dishes are always super rich. And
so you did coq au vin in French and then snails in English. I thought you were going to get into
I could
chicken and wine and snails, or coq au vin and escargot.
What do they say? They say with fish sauerkraut. Okay, that's a new one to me. But a Burgundy cassoulet. Okay, cassoulet, yeah, for sure.
I like the fact they've got a tasting note with them. It goes a dozen oysters.
A dozen oysters.
You can't have half a dozen oysters with this. You've got to go the whole hog with it.
Yes, it is 100% Aligote. Just to answer that one. So, I think one of the big real trends that we're talking about is that in the whole of the winemaking world, people are looking at this uncertainty, the craziness of the climate that we're seeing, and we're trying to find ways to deal with that. And it's really difficult. It's a really challenging thing to do. And so we no one's really got the answers yet. And there's answers that are like, forget this, rip up what we've got, plant a different grape. If you're in Bordeaux, plant something from Portugal instead. If you're in Burgundy, plant something from Bordeaux or Rhone instead.
Yeah. There seems to be a kind of mentality, a very basic mentality of just move a little bit north.
Yeah.
What was there has gone to here, has
Move
gone
it
to
up
here,
north
has gone to here.
Absolutely.
So if we keep going the way we're going, the Outer Hebrides will be great for Cabernet Sauvignon in about 10 years.
Yeah, don't. That's kind of scary, but it's a lot of this stuff comes down to the ground, and it's not a sexy topic. It's not an exciting sounding topic, but we're getting a lot of people who are doing.
You've made it sound.
I'll do the best I can. I'll do the best I can, because we hear a lot of these kind of eco terms banded around, where it's organic, whether it's biodynamic, it's sustainable, it's vegan, it's natural, it's regenerative. And what on earth does all of that mean? Which bits are right? Which bits should we care about? And a real danger with all of this, that it sort of comes across as a bit of greenwashing. You know, we're saying this is a better wine than the other one just because we put a buzzword on it. And there are some, you know, really tricky problems with this. But, you know, it comes down to the fact that 95% of the world's food depends on this thin layer of topsoil that sits above, you know, the rocks and everything beneath. And we can overlook it, but we're not standing on dirt, but we are standing on the rooftop of another kingdom, said James Milton, who's a New Zealand wine grower. And that is the truth. What is happening below the surface is astonishing in its complexity. And while we might not look at it and it might make us a bit creeped out, there's so much going on down there. And it's at the heart of what makes a wine taste good. It really is. And you've got this whole ecosystem of beetles, termites, ants, microbes, and even some chemical communications between the different plants that they send to each other to say, hang on, the water supply is getting a bit low, go into a sort of a drought management mode. It's amazing. The vineyard is a connected system. But if we do what sort of modern kind of farming does, it strips away all of that stuff, and it just poisons the soil. It just goes, you might as well be growing it in a lab, like this kind of hydroponic farming. The soil just becomes a kind of a medium, doesn't it, to get water and nutrients in there.
It strips all personality, sense of place, or style from any wine grown.
Quite right. And, you know, a lot of this has been enabled by this crazy thing called the Haber-Bosch process, which basically is how they made industrial petrochemical fertilizer. So all of the nutrients that a plant really needed to grow, you could just dump in the soil from these fertilizers that are made basically from oil. And it was made by mistake by a couple of Germans who were trying to make explosives at the time. So they ended up accidentally producing the fuel that effectively has powered the population growth from, you know, whatever it was to the sort of, you know, 8 million or whatever we are at now. That's all been enabled by artificial fertilizers. But it doesn't make interesting food. And when you cut through the soil, you get this big difference. A natural soil structure has roots from trees that go down super deep. It has things growing on those roots. It has things all moving around. And with tilling, you know, where you basically rip up the soil and kill everything you can, that just ends up with just this tiniest loose layer of soil at the top, which is great, and you can grow crops in it super easily, and there's nothing to compete with them. And it's all about competition. What's competing for water? What's competing for nutrients? And if there's nothing else growing there, then your plant can grow super big and super fast. It's nice and easy. But equally, if it's that loose and there's nothing holding it together, then, you know, you can get soil erosion. And look at California over the last few weeks. Massive amounts of rain just sweeping away the soils into the sea, effectively into the rivers and then into the sea.
So yeah, it's rivers, it's seas, and then that affects whole different ecosystems, because whatever's in that soil, and I'm probably jumping ahead of you.
No.
If you've sprayed that with copper, that copper's now in the river with your salmon you're then eating.
Yeah.
So you can go. It affects whole.
The problems just go on
ecosystem.
and on and on, and you know, we can treat these kind of things like we almost look at them like anything that's growing there, anything that's living there, any beetles, any pests. We call them pests. They aren't pests. They lived there. That was their world. They lived in this place. So, you know, we use herbicides to kill everything else that grows. We use fungicides to kill all the fungus. We use insecticides to kill all the insects. We rip the soil up with tilling and subsoiling, and then we put back in this kind of like gloop, this artificial fertilizer, and it does it. And like Jamie was saying, particularly what is used in the vineyards is a mixture of copper and sulfur. It's called the Bordeaux mix, basically, and they blast it onto the vines to stop molds growing on it. But guess what? It also stops other stuff growing. The crazy thing is you can do this and still be organic.
Because copper is natural and sulfur is natural.
It's all natural.
So that's all good, dude.
Yeah, indeed. So, but you look at this map with the concentration of the soil being poisoned, it's where all the vineyards are, and that's a bit of a worrying thing. So there's this whole movement about, how can we kind of rebuild the soil, rebuild that living, connected soil with the fungus that goes through it, and make something that's doing things in a more natural way. So in a single teaspoon of soil, this is a really good point. Surprising how many people think organic means chemical free, and there's chemicals and there's chemicals in the organic world. It's a bit of a strange one. But yeah, in a single teaspoon of healthy soil, you have more than 1 billion organisms, and there will probably be about 10,000 different species of things, and they all have a role. They all have a role, particularly within the nitrogen cycle. And oh, good, that was the next slide. I was worried it wasn't going to be, but they are taking the nitrogen out of the air, particularly when you've got the presence of lightning that does this kind of weird electric thing, and it locks up the nitrogen with some of the hydrogen, and it provides these natural fertilizers. But the artificial stuff we put in, the plant doesn't quite know what to do with it. It's like a person who's being fed Coca-Cola rather than, yes, there's sugar in it, there's energy, there's water. You could probably survive for a while, but it doesn't break down. It doesn't change in the way that the plant's actually naturally supposed to do. And so that's a really, really difficult thing. If you've got this natural ecosystem around it, the plants get what they need because they grew there in the first place before we started messing around with it, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely.
And vines were these kind of plants that would grow up trees. They needed trees. Yeah, we don't have many trees in the vineyard or anything like that. So what a lot of people are starting to do now is to put cover crops into the spaces between it, rather than just nuking everything, going through it with something like glyphosate and killing everything. They plant plants such as like vetch and rye grain and fescue, these things which will lock up that nitrogen and bring it down into the soil and do the job that was supposed to be done around that vine. And then they might mow it a bit, they might even sort of fold it down into the ground to try to help this natural rotting, build up carbon in the soil that also the plants need. It's a really, really cool thing to see. And the vineyards might look a bit messier than you expect, but it's a deliberate thing, and there are lots of experiments going on to what to plant in there. And one of the other big problems they're trying to deal with is soil compaction. The tractors are big, heavy things, obviously, we all know that,
Absolutely.
but you kind of need them to do this whole sort of automation. And that brings us neatly back to sort of Joanna Bell's question, which was, why did people till the soil? Well, partly it was to get rid of the weeds, for sure. But partly it's to break up the surface, which if it gets compacted, the air can't get down to the roots. The nitrogen can't get down.
And from days back, difficult to plant into.
Yeah, it's difficult to plant into. It forms this kind of crunchy ridge that's hard on top of the soil, and the water can't even get through very easily. It might run off into the rivers rather than going down to where it's needed. So soil compaction is a big problem. And you find that some of the most famous vineyards in the world, like DRC, Domaine de la Romani Conti, they use horses to go through the vineyard because they don't want to use tractors, because they don't want to crush down the soil quite in such a natural way. Some of the people are actually experimenting a lot with planting trees right on inside in vineyards, like a lot more than you might have expected. People used to be completely against this because the trees would provide shade. The shade would stop the plant getting the sunlight that it needs to ripen.
And also fight for nutrients.
So it's fighting for nutrients and water. And if you're in a place like California, that might seem completely stupid thing to do. But yeah, this is actually California. And what they've done there is they've planted, I think it's walnuts and wheat in the same thing. And both of them have a 40% higher yield than a field that if it just had the walnut trees or just had the wheat. What the hell? That doesn't make any sense. But it turns out they were meant to be together. They were meant to live together. And so our kind of obsession with this monoculture has gone a bit too far. So yeah, lots of people are now, instead of using this Roundup stuff, which is glyphosate, really horrible kind of reputation, whether it fully deserves it or not, who knows? But
well, if you want it killed, it kills it.
It certainly does do the job. It certainly does. And yeah, It's easy if you have the space, true.
That is a fair point.
But people are inventing tools that will go between the vines to mow or to try to sort of, just rip things up a bit between the vines and keep the rest
more
of it.
minimal intervention.
Yeah, minimal intervention. So that's a really good thing. I'm nearly at the end of this. So the other big thing that's been happening is animals in the vineyards.
Is this where they're trying to get all their ducks in a row?
They're trying to get all their ducks in the row.
That's my part.
They're being sheep following the leader. We're going to move on to the next wine, which is Jason Huss's Tablas Creek. They were the pioneers of sheep in vineyards in America, and these sheep will go through the vineyard. They'll mow the grass for you, so you don't have to use the tractor, so it doesn't compact the soil. And then they put down natural fertilizer onto the soil, and they go through this so efficiently. If you did in the summer, of course, they will eat all of the vines, and you don't want that. So you have to do them in the winter. And what they will do is they will run them through all the different vineyards, like maybe 3 times. They keep just adding fertilizer, killing the weeds, going back round and doing the same again. And they put down a huge ton of natural materials that the vines needed. That was part of, because in the wild, there would have been animals roaming through the vines. We're the ones who take them out. So the whole, I think, in a way, the regenerative agriculture thing is trying to encourage an ecosystem that is of insects, of microbes, of fungus, of animals, and of the plants that we're trying to grow that work together. And you can't necessarily eliminate the pest, but if you've got something in there that eats that pest, and then you've got something in there that eats that, and then you've got something in there that eats that, and then that produces the fertilizer you need, it was the way the vineyard was supposed to work in the first place. And it's just a much better way of doing it. I can't pronounce it. Vergerhead, I think, estate in South Africa use these Indian runner ducks. It's brilliant stuff, absolutely brilliant. They go through and they eat all the snails that are eating the vines. They're not trying to kill them with a pesticide. They bring in ducks, and again, the ducks do the same thing. They do the job. So it's a wonderful thing. Just bring in something and try to stay in a kind of connected thing. The very sort of last point really is that a lot of, like we said, Chardonnay, super kind of fragile. Pinot Noir, super fragile. A lot of these grapes just don't have the genes to deal with, particularly in wetter climates like, I don't know, England. They don't have the genes to be resistant to mildew and botrytis and all these things that just naturally exist in the wild and are there to have a role. Again, they've got a role in breaking that material down at the end and helping it rot into the soil. But these peewee grapes, which are mostly vinifera, mostly the normal kind of vines we use, they are now trying to sort of do without genetic modification, just by selective breeding. They're trying to bring in this nice mixture of grapes that we know and like, but with a bit of the disease-resistant stuff, which has been really common in table grapes for a long, long time. So if you start seeing things like Sauvignon Gris and Cabernet Cortis coming up, the reason they're there is because they just need less intervention in the vineyard. It's a more natural process at that point. And I think, was it you were talking to somebody the other day, weren't you, about this?
Yeah,
whole thing?
and just along the lines. And I think it's the point that we keep going. People use this word sustainable, sustainable, and sustainable by standard is keep everything the same.
Yeah,
but if we've already,
I don't have to stop it.
if we've already broken it,
yeah,
keeping it, sustaining that broken system,
it's not good enough.
It's
really,
not good enough.
No.
So we've got, and this is why regenerative is that next step up from being sustainable. Doing your best. And it's, for me, it's not always about, is it organic? Is it this? Is it that? Is it the other? I think you need to look deeper into the winery and look, are they doing best practice?
Yep.
Are they able to be organic? Because sometimes they're just not. Are they able to be vegan? Sometimes they're just not.
No, you can't. Yeah.
And there's winemaking choices, and there's conscious decisions and subconscious decisions that happen within the vineyard. So there's more to it than just having a stamp on it that says it's vegan, organic, those kind of things.
It's trying to restore what we've.
Should we jump back to the tasting notes on the Alligator quickly,
so
we can get back onto one?
That sounds good. Lemon,
we got some ducks in there.
Peppery ducks.
People getting their ducks. Look at that, genius.
Well, I hope that I hope that was of interest to you. I certainly think it's just the right approach to do these things, and yeah, it requires a bit more thought. But we're going to hear from Jason in a little bit on his views on this all, and try to sort of see what he thinks about what they've done in practice and what worked and what didn't work. And the evidence-based approach is a really nice way of doing it, I think, because you've got to understand what works and what doesn't and why things are happening.
And I think when we go to the bit from Jason, it really says that, because there's having the buzzwords and saying I want to be X, Y, Z, whatever. But then there's the why. You can say, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it, but why? What does it achieve? So what we're getting on to, and Alex will move the tasting notes over. So we are going to Tablas Creek, which is California. And you put that up loud and proud. Yeah. Well done, Alex. Very proud.
I think this one's better though. I like this.
But so we're in California, and these guys are really not even pioneers, but just really, home away from home. It's part of the Perrin family, who we're going to taste a little bit of their wine later.
Yep.
And this is their California project, Tablas Creek. I've loved these wines. I've known these wines for a long time. But so much. They're absolute pioneers in this regenerative farming.
For sure, yeah. But just like the Perrin family were back in France, they were one of the first ones to start trying to think about the place that they were actually growing their grapes, rather than just doing what everyone else did. They were like, what? How can we make it better? This isn't right?
Absolutely. So this is a Roussanne, and Roussanne is a grape that you'll generally find in the south of France, in the Rhone Valley. A lot of the time used as a blending grape. You don't often see it as a single varietal. We are seeing, and it's one of my other trends for the year, is Rhone varietals. You're going to start that Rhone Ranger feel, that you're going to start seeing these Syrahs, Grenaches, Roussannes, Viogniers grown as single varietals from places you might not expect. But
and particularly in America, it's been massive. I think you're really seeing a move towards that. I've seen it as far up as going up into Napa and places, that people are now starting to plant more Syrah in Northern California, as well as down in the south.
Going up, a lot of places too hot for Syrah now.
It's too hot, yeah.
But we've been doing a lot of talking, and obviously with that, you've not been able to do a lot of tasting and drinking. So
wine number 3.
We will move on to wine number 3. Notes are up, and video is coming.
It is.
He's just going to click the button.
Should I click it?
Click that button.
That's great. Hear what he says. He knows better than me. See you in a bit.
Regenerative small r is an idea like sustainability. Regenerative Organic certification is a certification program that kind of puts the regenerative practices into a framework and then certifies that you're doing all of the pieces. So let me take you through our own progression as to how we got there. So we had been farming organically. We decided we wanted to look at something more holistic, and so started implementing sheep in the vineyard, started following more and more of the biodynamic protocols, integrating more biodiversity, planting fruit trees every 100 or so vines that we would plant, leaving sections with beneficial insect habitat, native vegetation. And that eventually led us to getting our biodynamic certification, even though I think it's fair to say that we have always been skeptical about the more mysticism, astrological parts of biodynamics. And then when we got a call in 2018 asking us if we would be interested in joining the pilot program for a new certification that was called Regenerative Organic Certified, we dove into that and realized that it sort of checked all of our boxes and addressed what we felt like were some of the shortcomings of both organic and biodynamic. So organic is really quite rigorous, but it's very narrow. It basically is a list of things you can't do. You can't use chemicals for fertilization or pest control or weed control. And if you don't use any of those prohibited things and you go through a certification, you can be organic. But it says nothing about your use of resources. You could be flood irrigating a water-intensive crop in the desert, and as long as you aren't using chemicals, you can be organic. And for people who aren't super familiar with biodynamics, it was written by an Austrian philosopher more than 100 years ago. And it talks a lot about things like activating cosmic energies by adding this particular concoction at this particular time. And as we've learned more about the science behind it, there's usually good scientific basis for why you're supposed to add this particular thing at this particular point in the growing cycle. But it's not because it's activating its cosmic energies. It's because, well, let's use an example. So there's a silica prep. You're supposed to grind up quartz and spray it, dilute it in water, and spray it on the leaves of your vines as you get towards the second half of your growing season. And it's supposed to, again, like refract the sun's rays in a particular way and activate energies. And that's not why it works. It works because silica is a micronutrient that grapevines need to photosynthesize optimally. You're supposed to do a couple of things with a cow horn. You're basically supposed to put a prep in the cow horn and then bury it in the soil for a certain number of lunar cycles. And sometimes this is manure, sometimes this is a plant extraction. Again, if you know the science behind it, it's much better to allow, say, manure to break down in the soil for a certain amount of time before you then apply it to your farm. So what you're doing is you're essentially giving it time to evolve into something that is more easily absorbed and less likely to carry other negative impacts. Does it matter that it's in a cow horn? No, I don't think it does. Does it matter that it's 3 lunar cycles as opposed to 45 days or 60 days? No, I don't think it does. It was what people focused on, but it was not at all why biodynamics was important or why it worked. And the specifics of it, people got hung up on the specifics of it as opposed to the generalities of apply good natural materials at the right times and eliminate chemicals so that your vines can make sense of their environment and regulate themselves in a more normal way. Like if you read the actual biodynamic writings, I'll read it and just be like, you've got to be kidding. How could anybody have thought that this was a serious approach to farming? But the thing is, it works. You are doing things that allow the microorganisms in the soil to thrive. That creates links in essentially the food chain, the nutrient chain in your soil, which allows the soil to break down organic matter more effectively. If you also reduce tillage, which is one of the things of regenerative farming, it then allows these larger and larger networks, the roots that are growing underground and all of the other symbiotic microorganisms that live with them to grow to more denser and denser colonies, which increases the organic matter in your soil. It increases your soil's water holding capacity, and it gives you the ability to allow your crop, whatever that is, to pull what it needs from its natural environment, as opposed to you having to continue to add inputs from the outside because the environment itself has been stripped of its diversity and its ability to create those raw materials. Since we really moved to farming regeneratively, which I think of as being, at least from a soil health perspective, when we were farming the whole vineyard biodynamically and got the flock large enough that we could get them through the whole vineyard every winter, which was 2016. I think we've been on the best run of quality that we have ever seen. I think these vintages, 2016 through 2021, which were a range of like drought years, wet years, hot years, cool years, uneven years, frost years. I think that run of quality that we've been on in those 6 years is unmatched in our history. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that the things that we're doing in the vineyard, which we think are the right things for the soil, the right things for the long-term health of the vine, have also made grapes that have more character and more intensity and more focus. That comes through in the wines that we make. And ultimately, it's not a choice between doing things in the right way for the environment and doing things in the right way to make the best wine that we can. The choices that we're making in terms of farming for the future are also the right choices in terms of making great wine in the present. And that, I think, is a really important thing for producers to realize, is that all of these investments that you're making in the long-term health of your soils and your vines, they're going to show up right away in the grapes and in the wines that you make.
I think he's got such a way with words. He is his values. Julia has some excellent points. Like, what the hell is a chemical when you're talking about this stuff? Why is silica ground down not a chemical, but sulfur and copper is a chemical, or other way around? This is a very difficult thing, and quite often what you find is there are no free decisions with all of this. You find if you are going to not use, let's say, a selective developed chemical that will kill one specific thing that you don't like, you might end up replacing it with something that hurts everything, because you've still got to protect your grapes against that thing. And the other thing is that
There's so many places they've put stuff in invasive species, and it's just
Yeah.
taken over the
Yeah,
entire
true.
world. Hasn't
yeah,
it?
it's a bad thing. And one of the other things that you have to think through is there's a lot of carbon output from going through the vineyard to do a spraying process. If you're doing if you're biodynamic and you're going to do something that's been diluted a million times to give you superpowered, you're still running the tractor through the vineyard and pumping out diesel fumes and carbon dioxide and monoxide into the vineyard, well, nitrous oxides. Well, if it rains immediately after that, you then have to go and do it again, because the very specific chemical kind of herbicides you might use or fungicides to get rid of the mildew, they will attack deeply into the vine pretty much on day one. If it rains, they've still done their job. They're still protecting you. If you're doing one of these like sort of tea-based concoctions that relies on sort of tannins, like the people doing rooibos tea in South Africa, all sorts of things, you then have to reapply it the moment it rains again, which means you've got to do all that work and all the soil compaction, all the pollution yet again. So really tricky. But I prefer the science-based view of let's try to understand what bits of this work and only do the bits that work and not rely on, it's a moon day and blah, blah, blah.
And it does become an each to their own as to what they feel is best practice, best case, what's going to give them the best results
Agreed.
for what they either put in or don't put in. Because at the end of the day, what's in the glass has to be good.
It does.
Because if what's in the glass isn't good, it doesn't matter if you're organic, biodynamic, vegan,
and that's
carbon heavy.
You've been drinking
whatever.
these for a while. He said that these are the best vintages they've done. And I agree. I mean, you've been drinking them for a very long time. The wine's fantastic. California's had a horrible, horrible few years with fires and drought and all sorts of problems. And that is spectacular, isn't it?
It is.
Let's get the tasting notes up.
The thing is, the tasting notes, I couldn't. Well, I would say I couldn't do it better myself. But if I do that, I'd be out of a job. But beeswax, it's perfumey.
Wow.
It's got this toastiness about it. It's like, it's almost like burnt toast, like that warmth of like crunch, not burnt toast, but like just past toasty toast.
Yeah, I like that.
Like
That's good.
Rich buttered toast. It's lovely. It's got this herbaceous thing, but loads of honey, loads of beeswax, that beautiful richness to it, and it's such a lovely grape. And I think there's a comment in there going, I've only had Roussanne in a blend before. Isn't it a joy to have it all by itself? So then when you taste it in a blend again, you go, okay, that's coming from the Roussanne.
Yeah,
and I think that's absolutely
quite right. It's a very cool grape. And talking of the beeswax, one of the other big things that so that obviously there are only a few months that the sheep can do their thing, right? The rest of the year, they basically use the sheep to mow a kind of fire break all around their vineyards. So they keep them going all around the outside perimeter. So there's
are they on a really long piece of string?
They're on a really long piece of string. That's it. And in that gap, when the sheep aren't there, they put beehives in and they grow bees. They farm bees, and it's.
So I think that's a really, really interesting comment from Joanna. If you can pop it up, that it's not that.
Oh, that's Julia. Okay.
So
you got one preferring Japanese.
Yeah. But the last point that just come
different
in,
styles.
it just showcases it's the right wine for the right occasion. Yeah, the Koshu, light, fresh, drink it, lovely, sit in the sunshine, great acidity. The other two, lots more richness between the Aligoté and the Roussanne. And I think they cry out a little bit more to have some food, not just sit and drink it by itself.
I think that's probably the three biggest different styles of whites in one session that I've seen.
That we've done for a long time.
For sure. Really.
So speaking of those different styles, do you think it's time we should move on to some reds?
Yeah, I think that's a great plan. So let's move the tasting notes on
to wine number 4.
Oh, is it Pinot Noir? Oh,
it is
a shame.
Pinot Noir.
Is it from South Africa?
Devastated.
Oh, tragic.
Yes, just announce you've been there and get it over with, and we're done.
I haven't been to this part. Hang on. No, where's it from?
Hemel.
No, I have not been to Hemel.
Not Hempstead.
Not Hempstead.
The wine itself is Hemel. These grapes come from little plots all over the Western Cape.
Okay.
So this is Cristallum. I love these wines. Across the board, they make great wines. But where my reason for trend of this is is drinking.
Everyone loves Pinot Noir.
Everyone loves drinking Pinot Noir, but when you say Pinot Noir, we go Burgundy, California, Oregon, New Zealand, maybe.
Yeah.
So
Bit of Germany.
A bit of Germany, but I don't think a lot of people realise that it is German because it's it's a Burgunder over there, and you've got Pinot Nero coming out of Italy. But when we talk about where the Pinot Noirs that we know and we expect come from, and the point of this wine is try a grape you know from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And
especially for your Burgundy grapes from this kind of little spot in South Africa.
You might love it, you might not, and that's absolutely fine because you look at Sauvignon Blanc, you might like Sancerre, you might not like Marlborough, same grape.
Yeah.
But we're starting to see lots of, especially New World countries, where they're able to experiment, starting with different things.
Yeah.
So, when we talk South Africa, what do we think? We think Pinotage and we think Chenin Blanc and maybe a bit of
some
Syrah,
Cabernet
a bit of
Sauvignon,
Cab.
Syrah. Yeah.
We don't really think Pinot.
But that is the nuts thing about about South Africa is that in this quite small area around Cape Town, you've got everything from your super ripe Cabernet Sauvignon Bordeaux blends through to your super subtle Pinot Noirs, your very aromatic Sauvignon Blancs, your super fruity Chenin. They literally do everything around there. It's mad, and it's a great part.
It is, but
the world for that.
But I think South Africa, it's so, you say it's a little, it's still quite a big place, and you've got coastal, you go further inland, and it's a difference between doing Napa and Sonoma. The chalk and cheese.
True.
To taste, Sonoma does great Pinots, and Napa does cabs.
Massive cabs, yeah.
And you're literally going across a little bit of a hill.
It's not very far, yeah.
But where you go from being very coastal on the Western Cape to coming inland, those styles change drastically, very quickly.
But it's not that dissimilar a distance. That's the crazy thing. It's really I think the big difference is the roads are worse. It takes a bit longer, but yeah, this is beautiful. That's a fantastic Pinot Noir. I haven't even drunk it yet.
So these guys are third generation down from the Bouchard Finlayson winery, very famous in South Africa, making some absolutely phenomenal wines. And they've got some single vineyard plots, and then they have some bits that they kind of source fruit from all over the area. And this is one where they source different things, which allows them to blend places that are a little bit warmer for their richness, a little bit cooler for the acidity. And this is called their Peter Max. Would you like to hazard a guess? Did I tell you already why it's called Peter Max?
Well, you have. So that would be I'd be cheating a little bit. If you want to drop a thing into the chat and let us know why you think it's called Peter Max. Give us a go. We have got a question. Sorry, I missed the region. So this is the Hemel on Ard region, which is just to the east of Cape Town, kind of up into the hills, and this little kind of cool sort of shadowy bit that's just north of Hermanus. Hermanus, great place to go to watch whales in the ocean. Just beautiful,
but not watch whales in the World Cup.
Not watch whales in the World Cup. That was in Cape Town. That was and that was the football World Cup again. But Wales probably weren't there. Hemel on Ard, yeah, it's so good for these cooler varieties. It really is, and yet it is probably about 10 minutes from where you could be back growing your Cabernet again.
Oh, absolutely,
that's mad.
Absolutely,
that's absolutely mad. And so it goes back to why Burgundy now these days is starting to go, perhaps I can grow Syrah, perhaps I can grow that. And I think that is a part of a trend in itself, isn't it? The regions are finding, do you know what? We could push out of our comfort zone. We've been kind of trying to stretch ourselves to keep doing what we used to do.
So here's an off the beaten path and thoughts in the chat on this as well. We're starting to see these regions plant different things.
Yep.
How long do you think it's going to be before the powers that be, the DOCs, the DOCGs, the AOPs, the DOs, actually catch up with it and go, yeah, that's okay? And
this is the first appellation that does Burgundy Syrah.
Are we going to end up with another super Tuscan debacle that they just go, sod it, I don't care if I don't have a DOCG, I'll make what I want? Or do you think the regions and the governing bodies are going to jump in and go, you know what, we just need to do something. We've got to... relax what people grow or whatever, or change it. I think it'll be very interesting as to whether the wine industry adapts.
It's all political. It's all political, and that's what it all boils down to. It's like
ultimately, the people who can still sell their bottle of Pinot Noir for $2,000 don't want anyone to grow Syrah or do anything different. They want it to stay like that.
I think the best place to look at for this is obviously Bordeaux, because they they decided back in 1855 this is the way that it's going to be on one side, and obviously we'll keep regularly updating it, and then they didn't manage to get consensus to update it. Even now, like, it's still stuck with exactly the same producers being classed in the same way.
No,
And,
the
like,
Rothschild,
apart
the
from the
Rothschild,
Rothschilds,
but they
apart from the
didn't have
Rothschilds.
any money or political power, so
No.
that's how they got
But
messed up.
but it's hard. It's a lot easier to start something new. And you look in Carver, like, they didn't the way an Appalachian body works, or your protected graphical indicator, or DOT, or all the different names for these groups of vineyards that get together to try to protect their reputation collectively. It's very hard, because when you make a change, there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers, and it's very hard to get a consensus to make a massive change.
And
like
so
that.
much wine is based on tradition, and people like that tradition. It's what you want a Burgundy. I
don't want to pick up a Burgundy and find it's always peppery Syrah. That's not my expectation from a customer, that I'm going to do that. So it might be easier to come up with something new. I think it might be easier. But let's see.
Alex relabeling all the AOCs in the world, waiting for that.
Well, we couldn't even call our wine, anything, could we? It was supposed to be a wine of Europe, the stuff that we made for various reasons. But good Pinot Noir. Where, if you were to put this somewhere else in the world, would you say like New Zealand?
So for me, I'm going to get battered in
California.
I'm going to get battered in the chat for this, because whenever I go, don't pick that say it's like from somewhere else, and I do this.
But we all do.
This for me does not dissimilar to what Oregon does, and this is why I've always loved Oregon. That it's old worldy in style, where it's a little bit cooler, but new world technique. So there is that push on that fruit, but it's got elegance, it's got balance. It's not from the coldest place in the world. It's from it's a cool part of a warm climate.
It's not got that super chocolatey nature that a lot of the Californian ones have. It's got that more kind of classic sort of cherry-led Oregon side.
It's fruit-led. It's got that grippiness at the end, that little bit of tertiary about it, but it's not like licking the dirt like you do get in some Burgundy.
Joanna thinks New
Zealand in there.
Yeah, I think your Martinborough ones for sure.
If you're Martinborough, I think a lot of the time when New Zealand first pops into my head and I go stylistically, but Otago's when I go.
Yep.
And this is not that. It's what I'm saying. So when I go, if I'm comparing to somewhere else in the world, but a Marlborough or a Martinborough Pinot that's a little bit lighter, definitely. This, I think, maybe a touch richer, not quite as much acidity as something from Marlborough, but hey.
That's lovely. I like that.
It's really, really good.
Really
so
nice.
Cherry plum.
Nice one.
And once again, it goes through, the thing that we want from a really good quality wine. We've got primary fruits, we've got some secondary stuff with the spice and the vanilla, and we've got the tertiary component. Mm-hmm. So it means it's a really well put together wine. There's great intensity. There's some lovely complexity in there. It's
what you said.
It's a great wine.
What you said. And Jonah thinks it's very juicy.
Very juicy.
You're very juicy. It's been a while. We had to go back to that.
Welcome to 2023.
It's exactly the same as the last couple of years.
Yes.
Anyway,
that's
jokes, great.
Same
bad jokes, same great wines. We are now going to go on for a bit of a change to part of the Perrin family dynasty, which is actually the same family that basically kind of worked to partner up and to build the Tablas Creek winery in California. So, but with we're going.
I've been ignoring my duties of putting wine bottles up, haven't I?
You have. The Perrin bottles, they're beautiful. They're so nice. So it's a very classic bottle kind of thing, We need to get our little close-up camera again, don't we? That'll be good. We'll do that.
Well, he wants more.
Not tonight. We won't.
More tech to play with.
More tech, yeah. More things to go wrong. But Famille Perrin, very. I'm going to pour that because I want to drink it later. One of the most sort of the biggest pioneers conceptually as well of the Rhone region, and certainly there are most people would say they are the kings of Chateauneuf-du-Pape.
Absolutely. So Perrin make Chateau Beaucastel, which is if not the probably the most well-known Chateauneuf-du-Pape producer, and the reasoning behind this for my picks of trends this year
Yeah.
is not only did I say Rhone varietals are going to do that, so
For sure,
this is
yeah.
what it does, and this is 70% Grenache and 30% Syrah. But
Is this your value choice of the night?
I don't know if I don't know if value is the word, but here's a bottle.
Obviously, it's great value, but we've got that one, the
Here's a
big,
bottle
the
of
big
Chateauneuf
boy.
du Pape. So this bottle, somewhere between 100 and 200 pounds for Chateauneuf du Pape. Okay,
And you don't want to drink it for
absolutely
a lot of years.
delicious. Drink it at Christmas time. But I think where there is value to be had in the world is getting to know A, your producers, and B, your regions. Because sometimes you've got a certain place that is just perfect.
Yep.
It's got the brand name, it's got the credibility, it's got the small production, it's got the very best grapes on the entire
Your
planet.
Chateauneuf du Pape, for
And
example,
therefore,
that's going to start at what, 18, 20 quid these days, maybe 15.
And therefore, it can charge that money.
Yeah.
If you know that a certain vineyard is here and you can just walk down the slope or round the corner, you can find some really good value. So,
or even there was a tonnage that they were allowed to make. They could only turn that many tons of grapes into Chateauneuf du Pape, and anything else had to be called something different.
Absolutely, you see it in the Rhone, you see it in Burgundy, where they'll do what's called declassifying the wine. So
see it in Champagne.
Yep. That you'll go to Chassagne Montrachet and they've made their however many thousand litres they can make, and they go, oh well, this is just called Les whatever. And if you know that that's that, you can get some really good value. But so, am I saying
is this Chateauneuf du Pape, Chateau Beaucastel? No, it's not. Of course, it's not. But there's a lot of the same grapes going.
So same grapes,
yeah,
a lot of the same facilities, same winemaking team for parts of it.
They'll make it slightly different.
Do you want to move the tasting
of
notes
course,
so we can get people's tasting notes?
That's a great idea. That's what I had.
But sometimes I think there's a winery that we've used previously, and their Chateauneuf du Pape is about 40 quid, and their Côte de Rhône is about 15 quid. And there's that question of sometimes you just have to have a bottle of Chateauneuf du Pape. You want to have the prestige, you want to go this, it's a specialty care bang. But then there's the decision: would you rather have one bottle of that or 3 bottles of their Côte de Rhône? And that's not my decision to decide or tell everyone what they should drink or shouldn't drink. But you can sometimes do that and, find some really good value. You go to Piedmont, Barolo. Barolo is the king of Italian red, and it's big, it's over the top, it's spicy, it's tannic, it's chewy, it's prestigious, and it's loads of money.
Yeah.
You can go outside of the Barolo region and drink another Nebbiolo. Will it be perfectly? It might be. You're not paying the price for the name. So when you know your regions and you know the grapes that go into that, so you can just sneak up and down a hill, go around the corner, next village, and find something.
And I think that's the thing for me. So, is this the cheapest Côte de Rhône you can find? No, it's not. But there are cheap.
It's the cheapest one you can find on this tasting this evening.
That's true. That is true. But if you look at a cheap Chateauneuf du Pape, you can find them in your local supermarkets. Of course you can. And you can go to Chateauneuf du Pape. And I went into some wine cellars and had some. And I've got to be honest, they were really disappointing. Especially for that money. And at that price point, this one you're paying for the wine, and that one you're paying for the name.
I think what's interesting
that's my top tip.
Chateauneuf du Pape, when you read about it or you hear about it, the way it's sold to you is it's this one little castle in the middle of middle of the region, new house of the Pope, and that's that. And you just expect it to be. There's lots of different people that make Chateauneuf du Pape.
Right.
There's lots of different, and it's quite
a big area. Yeah, it's a big area.
It's quite a big area. So there's some very good Chateauneuf du Pape, and there's some very not quite so good Chateauneuf du Pape. So it does come down to producer. It's like going, Chateauneuf du Pape is no different to saying, I don't know, Napa Valley. And there's some really good Napa Valley cab, and there's some really poor Napa Valley cab. There is. And they can both be very expensive, but you need to know who the producer is and why it is, and I think that's important.
I think the producer is the important bit. More largely, there is a correlation between is it the place or is it the person. I mean, you're not going to find a really terrible winemaker owes acres of Grand Cru Burgundy sites. They're not going to do that. You know, they would be out of business. So there is a correlation.
But it's also the thing, because they can command a higher price, they can buy better tools, better equipment, employ
better people,
better winemakers, better staffing.
And a lot of it, you just need more people.
Better marketing budget.
Yeah, true. but that is that they've spent the money on the wine. They've spent the money on making the grapes well. They've spent them, and they are so bought into this whole kind of ecosystem view of the world that you look at a lot of the Chateauneuf sites. It's just they're bare mud and rocks, and it's just awful to. But it is warm. You go to Avignon and you head up to Chateauneuf, and it's a beautiful drive. You're going through this quite green country, so you get to Chateauneuf, it's just bare soil. It's muddy, dry. It's like another planet.
But it's warm and it's windy, and that's how they can make these beautiful styles of wine, because they're very disease resistant, because the wind comes through. It's dry, so the disease protection is higher. But these guys, they make lots of different styles. So this is their Côte d'Or. They also do an organic biodynamic Côte d'Or as well from certain vineyard plots. So they're doing best practices where they can.
Yeah.
Some is not, some is. And it doesn't mean that this is a bad wine and the organic one's a good wine. It doesn't mean that's saving the world and this isn't. It's
everything they do is all about diligence. But I love that. I really, really love that. That's a fantastic wine. What do you guys think? Shall we bring the tasting notes up? Let's have a look.
So we've got blackcurrant, red currant, plum, smoky, oak, leathery.
It's only 2019 vintage, so it's already starting to give you some of those tasting notes that really, really come through to show its development and its age. 4 years old, coming up to really beautiful stuff. This was aged a lot in oak, wasn't it?
Yes.
But I think a mixture of quite small barrels and slightly bigger ones. So you've got that kind of mixture between the bigger ones.
So, no, sorry, I lie. It's a bit of a mix. So 50% of stainless steel and then 50% in a mix of barrels. So,
okay.
But for 12 months. So there's a decent amount of time.
Yeah, a decent amount of time in oak. And that does give it a luxurious quality. Gives it those kind of, the oaky flavours, the vanilla-y flavours, and helps control the tannins so they're not so crazy. What I don't know actually about this one is the blend. So
do you want to
Rhone ones we're generally talking about. So the classic three that you find in a Rhone: Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre.
Yep. No pressure.
There's a bit of pepper there, isn't there? I think there's quite a lot of Syrah, and Syrah's been getting pushed out of the southern Rhone and getting up to the northern Rhone by climate change.
Well, yeah, it's just getting too hot, and it's either picked early and it's not ripe enough, so you don't get the flavours, or it goes all the way through, and then you get monster alcohol, and you're getting 16% alcohol Chateauneuf de Papes, which isn't what the world's looking for.
Well, I don't know. I think it's quite a bit of Grenache in this.
You just said there was quite a bit of Syrah.
Yeah, I did. But
quite a bit of Grenache and quite a bit of Syrah.
Yeah. The Mourvèdre...
Not so much?
Are you going to tell me it's like 100% Mourvèdre now?
No, I'm going to tell you it's 0% Mourvèdre, so you can say not so much. So, 70 Grenache, 30 Syrah.
30 Syrah. Okay. I'll take that because I do love a good Mourvèdre. Cool. Okay, I'll take that. That's fantastic.
So yeah, taste it. Find a producer. Taste their Chateauneuf de Papes. Taste their Côte d'Or side by side, and see what you think.
Yeah.
See, is it worth upgrading, or is it not?
And also,
what you like.
Try your supermarket Chateauneuf du Pape against this. I guarantee this is better. I absolutely guarantee it. Like at the same price point. And I know I'm going to say that.
Things.
I don't know why. I don't know what's going to do if you say I'm wrong. But I really would stake a lot of reputation on that, because I've had a lot of crappy Chateauneuf du Papes from supermarkets and from Chateauneuf du Pape itself. Like slap bang there in the middle. Naomi and I went into one of the producers, and we end up getting talked into buying a bunch of the stuff and bringing it back to the UK. And we aged it. And we had crack temp one at New Year's. It was flipping awful. We kept it temperature controlled for all that time.
Oh,
It
but-
was awful.
But the memories were there.
The memories were there.
Okay, so should we get out?
Let's
Should we
go
get
on
out
to
of the
wine
Rhone?
number 6.
Let's get
go.
out.
So where are
of
we
the
going
Rhone.
now? Not the Rhone.
Not the Rhone.
Okay.
We will leave the Rhone alone.
It's worth mentioning very briefly that one of our Christmas special is going to be in the
Yeah.
Adventure series.
Have you decided the Christmas special already?
I thought you had.
Well, I know, but let's not announce it because people
Oh.
people will hold it to us for a year. I might have come up with something new and fun by the time Christmas comes.
With this age.
Yes, not. I wouldn't
not
hold
not
it for a
20
long
years.
time, but 5 years or so, it will.
Yeah.
And once again, it comes down to what you like. If you like that kind of the fruitiness of it, drink it now. As it ages, you'll get more of the developmental flavors. You get more smokiness, more of the those tertiary, leathery kind of flavors. So some of that fruit will drop out. There'll be a little bit more elegance to it.
Yeah.
But 5 years, I think. Once you get to about 5 years on this, it's not going to go bad.
No.
It's sort of going to kind of plateau for another 5 years or
Slowly.
go and then start to fade. So this isn't something I buy a case of to hang on to.
Yeah.
But if you bought a case and you were drinking it bit by bit, a couple of years, it will develop. It will absolutely develop. But it really depends what you like. If you want this big fruity style, you want to drink it now. If you want more tertiary, hang on to it for a little while.
Just a note on the development of it. It's in a screw cap. And what the screw caps do is they control the amount of oxygen that you get into the wine to help it age. And it's a generally very consistent, reliable process. And so I would say that, well, it will age in exactly the way he described it, but you've got less of a chance of it kind of going absolutely awful, which, with a natural cork one, there's this horrible risk that you're going to wait 20 years and you open it and it's gone.
Corked or
Yeah,
too much
exactly,
oxygen or whatever. So
we've been learning a lot about corks and closures recently in our scientific studies. But we're now going on something completely different because this is where the hell is this from? Croatia.
Good job I'm here with the bottle, isn't it?
It is.
So-
it is good.
This comes down to trend-wise. I say new places, new grapes. But Croatia's been on the map for the last 5-6 years in wine circles. It's not brand new, but for people getting into wine, it might be
My
something.
folks were drinking Eastern
little
European wines back in the 70s and things, but they
But-
did go out of fashion
but-
for a while.
But to have them as a quality wine that we're
Yeah.
going to see more regularly, more accessible, and not you've got to get into the depths of some very quirky merchant or producer to be able
For
to
sure.
get hold of them. So this
Okay.
So this is Kozlovic, and they've been making wine. The winery's been around since 1904, so it's
Fair enough.
been doing it for a fair whack of
Yeah.
time. And this is a grape called Taram. And what I like about Croatia. What's interesting about Croatia is Italian wine has all the accolades.
Yep.
Yeah, Italy does this and this and that. And then you
And
look,
Greek wine's getting up.
and then you
know?
look at geographical wise. It's not
Yes.
very far away at all. It's there. It's over the border and done.
Yeah.
And so there's historically Croatian wines, but there's also a lot of new age Croatian wineries where families have been in Italy and the prices have gone up, and maybe a third or fourth generation winemaker, young startup wants to kind of go and do his own project, can't afford to buy a vineyard to grow some Amarone and can't afford to buy a vineyard to grow some Barolo, but was able to kind of go across the border and find some value land, not far away, so not much different, in terroir, climate, all that kind of stuff.
I don't know if you
are
look
able
back
to do
far
things.
enough that the whole of the empire of Venice, when Italy wasn't a country, Venice's empire extended all the way down that kind of western coast through Croatia and all of the other countries were almost like Macedonia. Like Macedonia doesn't touch the coast, does it? Right the way down. I sound like a twat here, but that it was this whole area around the sea and a lot of the Greek
Alex's online
islands.
geography club.
I'm gonna have to look it up. I've gone mad. Slovenia's at the top there, isn't it? Yes, there you go. Right, thank you. I'll get one of them right. But yeah, so there was a history of the winemaking back in those days as well, and it just got a bit lost, obviously, with the way it developed. But it smells interesting.
So this is a grape called Turan. And for me, the points on this, and people can put their tasting notes in without me going up, but it's really, really deep, dark
Yeah.
fruit. It's very bold, very punchy, screams that you need to have some steak with it.
Mm.
And this for me is like, if you like a kind of a more not an old school Bordeaux, but a more kind of like modern Bordeaux, that kind of style. It's got that beautiful power to it, that little bit of greenness, that chewiness, that tannin. And this is something,
it's almost kind of like Mega Malbec-y kind of character to it.
2020 vintage, yeah, and that's Malbec being Bordeaux-y, isn't it? So, but
True.
Mega Malbec, probably more driven towards that Cahors style than it is the Argentinian Mendoza style.
Definitely feels quite old world. Interesting.
Marshmallow, I like that. Whoever put marshmallow in, it's got that little vanilla-y
and marzipan as well. Okay. Oh yeah. There's that kind of slightly almondy characteristic too. I do get that. Nice. Good work, chaps. So
these guys relatively high, 240 meters above sea level, and that gives them where it would get that breeze. It protects a little bit from the breeze. You get that warmth because you're a little bit nearer the sunshine, but then those cold nights to keep your acidity high. So you get this grapefruit, this acidity, and it's it's very vibrant. It's almost zingy. You got acidity, you got tannin, you got balance. I think
this would age actually, wouldn't it?
I think this would. This would age, and I think this, if you've got a bottle of it, pour a glass, give it a swirl, come back in 5 minutes, give it a bit of air,
let it evolve,
and it will evolve. I'm not saying it has to be decanted, but this over over a meal would kind of feel it go on its journey.
Yeah, with a good sort of Mediterranean barbecue of some lamb or something, that would cut through, wouldn't it? That would be great.
Lamb skewers would be.
Yeah. Interesting. It's not and I think what I love about this is I think what I love about this whole process for me is that the ones that I know and the ones that I know the stories of, and then Jamie throws in things that just completely confound me. It's great. It's a wonderful thing to be a part of.
I always absolutely love that story, and I always want to tell it, but I can never ever pronounce the Croatian grape, so I've left it well alone. And I think that's interesting about trends and wine and things like that. That everything kind of goes back. Syrah and Shiraz are the same thing. And,
Malvasia.
There was talk, and it's just been proved slightly different. But Gamay and Valdegui over in California, were the same-ish thing, but it's like different clones. And then they thought Merlot and Chile, Argentina and Chile were the same thing, but it wasn't. The other one was Cabernet. So it's really interesting when you have that chance to kind of go back and go from there. And it is, and the whole point about authentic grapes and indigenous grapes from regions is what makes wine really, really exciting.
For sure.
When we do, we've done Southern Italy a couple of times, and we talk about the indigenous grapes down there and that preservation of things like Greco di Tufo and Aglianico and stuff like that. Because if people went round and they chased trends and ripped everything up and planted,
it would all be the same.
And planted Malbec everywhere or planted Chardonnay everywhere, it would be really boring. Isn't it nice when we get to travel and taste to go out and go, I've never heard of this. What is it? I've tried this grape. And then, it's fantastic to, when people jump in the chat and tell us stories of things that, we don't know. We've not been there. We've not done because wine is tasting and learning and experience together. And I think that's really cool. So no, thank you very much for sharing that. Appreciate it.
We'd all love to explore Croatia a bit more. I know we certainly had one of our viewers was going to that part of the world last year, and we never got the report on what she liked and didn't like. So I have to chase her on that one. But indigenous grapes are definitely having a moment for sure. And the fact is that they were often combined. Like grapes that were grown locally had little kind of small scale local winemaking techniques. And that combination made you think this grape is bad, and that's not right. It didn't have the kind of attention that a lot of the more international grapes have. And if you have 2 bottles of Turan, you actually have Turan.
Okay, well,
So you thought I was going to make a serious point there for a second. But
I
this is
really
awesome.
did.
It's been a long day.
But yeah, I think it is that thing. You look at indigenous grapes, and maybe it's been done as a table wine, and there hasn't been.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking it, but not the level of winemaking skills that you see in places like Burgundy. And it's the same. You can give a chef a world class piece of steak,
Yep.
and you can give it to someone who's never cooked a steak before.
Yep.
You've got the same raw ingredients. You're going to end up with a very different product at the end. And wine can be that as well. It's yes, all these winemakers. The work's done in the vineyard. Well,
Yeah,
there's also
a lot of it is.
But there's also a massive level of skill set as knowing when to pick it, what barrels to put it in, how to age it, when to put it in the bottle, what happens when something goes wrong, how to fix that.
So Jonah brings up a brilliant point, which is value for money. So, and I think that's a big thing for a lot of these ones, is that when you go to the slightly less well-known grape varieties, of course, a varietal wine of Tehran is... people go, where's that from? Is that from Iran? What is it? What's going on? And it doesn't have the name to ride on. So how much do these wines cost, Jamie?
Do we want to let people vote for their favourites?
Yeah, let's have the vote. Okay.
So while we do a little vote for the favourite, I'm just going to highlight what we've gone through, and some other bits that we think trends are going to be. So trends wise, I think Japan's going to be big this year. Just that's it.
It's a cool place.
Other grapes from regions that we already know, things like Aligote coming through.
Oh, just on the Japan thing, the gin now, Japanese gin is massively hot this year. That's going crazy. The Japanese whiskies, that was a few years ago. Japanese gin's going super hot. So yeah, the wine absolutely. But look out for Japanese gin. Definitely very good.
So we're looking at that. We're going to be looking at grapes that you're not expecting from certain regions. So Aligote from Burgundy, Pinot Noir from South Africa. We're going to see other things going on. We did a Zinfandel from India on our Discover series.
Yes.
We also need to look at people who are doing the right things, whether it's regenerative farming, eco-friendly, carbon footprint, all that kind of stuff, just trying new things.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing new things, supporting small farmers, indigenous grapes, small batch wines. I think are going to come right to the forefront, and finally taking a little step away from. We talk about people are premium.
Yeah.
I think we're going to take a little step away from it. And we don't need to go back down to the absolute basic lowest common denominator for wine. We can not go very far around the corner and very far away from the things we've always known and loved. But if we need to tighten the belts a little bit, there's some great options out there. But I do want to talk about it. It's a bit blowing our own trumpet, but what other people are doing. And it comes to that sustainability and looking after the environment, that kind of stuff, and that is alternative format wines.
The packaging.
Wine in bottles is what we've always done, and it's what a lot of people expect, and it looks good and it's nice, and we pour it and it's got a cork in it. But there's some fantastic people doing some really good alternative format,
and it's important because on a bottle like this, especially this is quite a heavy bottle. Around half of the carbon footprint, if not more, the carbon emissions from making the wine, all of that work in the vineyard with the tractors, all of that sort of stuff, you can make whatever savings you can out there. If you're sticking in a glass bottle that weighs a kilo, that's a lot. That's about 8 kilos worth of carbon dioxide that's pumped out just making that bottle in the first place. And so alternative packaging wines are really important, and I think it's great to see better wines going into.
And I think that's the thing. And I think it goes from 15 years ago, a bottle of wine with a screw cap on. People go, "Ooh, don't want anything with a screw cap on." And now I think we've got that with just new formats. We've done wine in kegs, and people go, "Is it any good?"
Yeah.
Yes, it's great.
It's great.
Bag in box is doing some really, really good stuff. We've worked.
There's still some crap.
Oh, there absolutely is. But we've worked with the guys at When in Rome who are really good. They're pioneers in carbon neutral, great guys. The guys at Lalo, fantastic. Then there's Can Wine Company, and Copper Crew.
It's also worth checking out Bag and Box Wine.
Box Wine Club.
They're local.
There's lots of cool alternative format, and just because it's not in a bottle doesn't mean it's not good.
I think one of my favourites is the Bagnum, this 1.5 litre pouch with the bag and box tap on it. It doesn't have the cardboard, and it's a 1.5 litre, because a bottle quite often is not quite enough for when
You-
you've got 4 people around.
Oh,
just
fair
for me,
enough.
just
Yeah,
for me,
for
obviously.
Tuesday.
Yeah, for Tuesday night on
Perfect.
my own. No, you know what I mean. And so yeah, I like that kind of format. But yeah, it's important to separate the packaging from the product and try it. And if you don't like it, yes, don't judge the
But
packaging.
if the wine's good, how does it matter how it got in the glass?
Yeah.
So let's have a little look at the favourites for the night.
Let's do that. Where are we? No way! Wow. Okay. Wow. That's fascinating. So the wine of the night is wine number 6, the Turan. How about that? That is sensational.
Oh, that's amazing, because
Goodness
that
me.
would not have been
That wouldn't have been what I'd have expected.
not at all. But that's the joy of getting everyone out and tasting.
Amazing.
So do you want to pop the prices up so we can see what great value that Turan is? And yes, they are all available on the website. And as the prices come up,
Let's do the prices. Sorry, I was too busy reading the wonderful comments. So there we go. There are the prices. And
you get rid of the comments.
If I get rid of that, then you can see the QR codes and go to the website. But yeah, towg.co.uk/collections/23trends. Or you can just go onto our website and search for whatever one you like. So the Grace, I mean, that's super cool. It's a really amazing wine. And I think the whites are fascinating. Like,
and the Aligote nearly says badger, so that's worth a quid extra.
Badger Aligote. But the 14.95, the fact the wine of the night was the cheapest. How about that? That's a good top tip. So go and buy some. And if it says we've run out, buy more and we get it in. Don't you worry, it's fine. We've got plenty. So yes, well done to the Turan, and yeah, for sure. That's the way to go. A cool new wine that keeps evolving. It's just fascinating, isn't it? I've got licorice in it now.
There's a lot going on.
Mad.
So anyway, next month on Discoverers, we will be doing Argentina. On Adventurers, with all you guys, we will be doing
it's
alternative Argentina. And for those who really want to know, I shall not be here for it. And Alex will be joined by the wonderful Lee Isaacs for that. I am heading to Toro to find some cool Spanish wines for a masterclass coming up soon. And then in March, we are going to be doing a wine and cheese tasting.
Oh, yes.
We are working on the logistics right now. We may well have a guest host who is a cheesemonger to come and join us. And then, so as soon as we've got that organised, we will organise how to order the cheeses, where to get the cheeses from, all that kind of stuff. If you don't order the cheeses, you can still join us, still drink the wine.
We'll give you a list
your
of
own
what's
cheeses from your supermarket,
yeah.
but we will give you a way you can just go and get the cheese, and we will give you a way to kind of go and do your thing. So there we are. So Joanna is about to buy 458 bottles of Turan, and that's wonderful. And we will get that out.
We're all going for Turan. Absolutely.
Wherever we'll be. So it's not K Syrah anymore.
No, it's true.
Perfect.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it. It's been a wonderful night, and it's been always a pleasure to spend time with you all. And tell your friends, and get them to come along next time as well, because it would be great to see them. And yeah, hope you had a great night, and we'll look forward very much to seeing you in February. And
500, you've heard it here first.
500, what's that?
I would buy 500 Turan, and I'd buy 500 more. No. Okay, on that note, it's probably time to say good night. Good night, everyone.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.